That's great. That's everyone in from the waiting room. There'll probably be a few late joiners, but we can admit them as we go. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending the Neighbourhood Watch Network Spring Crime Prevention webinar series. This is the last one in a series of 5. We're really pleased that you have managed to join us. And I'm just going to go through a few of the rules in today's webinar, just for everyone's benefit. So if you can all please turn your cameras off, that helps in terms of the presentations and keeping the kind of bandwidth as good as it can be. So if you can turn your cameras off, that would be great. We will be keeping everyone muted during the webinar. Again, that just stops background noise and makes it much easier for presenting. If any of you have got any questions at any time, if you can pop those in the chat function, which is at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's a chat option, and we'll be putting Ruby and myself will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation, and pop any questions in there, and we will ensure that Saskia is able to answer the questions. We'll put those questions to her at the end of her presentation. Obviously, we would want everyone to treat everybody else in the chat with respect, and I'm sure you'll understand that if anyone's got any individual cases or situations, we won't be able to respond to those individually. We would urge you to either call us or email us, and we will do our best to direct you to the most appropriate support or help you ourselves if that's possible. But we can't respond today to individual cases. At the end of the session or first thing next week, you will receive a link to the webinar. It is being recorded, and we would ask at the end, there's a code, and we'd really like you to complete the survey if you would at the end. But we will make a start. I'm really delighted that Saskia Garner, who's the head of policy and campaigns at the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, is joining us to present today. I'm really pleased. I've heard Saskia speak before. I think it'd be really interesting and enlightening. But I'll now turn over to Saskia. So welcome, Saskia, and over to you.
Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely lovely to be here today. I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, who we are and what we do, and then turn our attention to issues of harassment and stalking, what those are, the prevalence of those behaviours, and some sort of guidance and tips for anyone who believes they might be affected by those issues. And happy to answer any questions at the end. Hopefully most of you are aware of the Trust, but for those who aren't, we were set up soon after the disappearance of Suzy by her parents in order to raise awareness around issues of personal safety. And in fact, they did have reason to believe that Suzy may have been stalked in the lead up to her disappearance. Suzy was a 25-year-old estate agent. She went to show a client around a house, a Mr. Kipper. She'd written this in the diary. He was actually, witnesses reported seeing her walking away from that house with a man shortly after that appointment was due. But devastatingly, Suzy was never actually seen again. She was assumed, sadly, murdered, although a body has never actually been found. She was declared deceased some years after her disappearance. And that case is actually still open with the police, although it's not something we work on at the Trust. But essentially, and really quite incredibly, her parents set the Trust up to champion and prevent what happened to Suzy really happening to anyone else, with a particular focus on personal safety in the workplace, which is a large part of our work, but also very much about our daily lives out and about and how we can work to stay safer and what we can do if we feel unsafe and where to get advice. So thinking about harassment initially, harassment is defined as behaviour from someone else that causes a person alarm or stress, and the point here is around unwanted behaviour. It can only needs to take 2 occasions of harassment by the same person to be classed as harassment. And this could include if someone is contacting you without your permission or making inappropriate comments, innuendos, rude gestures, unwanted remarks, requests for sexual favours, interfering with property, or indeed, physical damage to your property. So there are a number of ways this can manifest, and of course this can indeed be online as well. But today I'll be focusing more on the in-person behaviours that we might experience in our everyday lives. What we know from our research is that incidents of harassment can actually have a devastating impact on people. That incessant contact, that unwanted intrusion by someone can really take its toll, and that can result in issues of depression and anxiety. We know that people have, left their jobs as a result of this. It can cause panic attacks. When we think about that course of conduct over a period of time, it really is quite devastating. And so we do a lot of work at the Trust raising awareness of, sadly, how prevalent behaviours are, but also where to get help, which I'll come on to shortly. And really what we highlight is that, unfortunately, this is part of a wider continuum of behaviours that make up what we refer to as violence against women and girls. So with a specific target on those groups. And often underlying those behaviours, there can be an element of misogyny. And we are very aware at the Trust that changing attitudes across society that are behind many of these behaviours is absolutely vital to tackling them and reducing them. And that's something we spend a lot of time doing, influencing policy and legislation. We've conducted a lot of research into harassment over recent years. We have an annual campaign called National Safety Day, and we focus in on different safety issues each year. And I just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot, albeit quite concerning really, of the different areas where we've seen a prevalence of harassment, and I'm sure this will not be a surprise to many of you. So for Personal Safety Day, it's gone at the end of 2023, we found that a shocking 88% of respondents to our survey had actually experienced unwanted behaviour on public transport in the last 5 years. And this is despite a reduction in travel during the pandemic. Sorry, this wasn't last year's, it was a couple of years ago. I'll come on to our topic from last year. And what we found with looking at public transport was that actually women were more affected than men, more likely to experience behaviours that could be interpreted as sexual harassment or assault, with clearly a devastating impact on those who experience it. We've also looked previously in previous Personal Safety Days at harassment in the nighttime economy. Our survey in 2022 showed that 1 in 10 people had experienced some kind of harassment whilst at work, and that also a third of those had experienced that whilst travelling to work as well. So it's that continuum of behaviours throughout their whole daily experience, essentially. Again, women were more likely to experience harassment on their way to the workplace, with over a quarter of those, with nearly 50% of women rather than around a quarter of men. So clearly, all aspects of our lives, both at work, transport, sport and exercise, we are seeing a prevalence of many forms of harassment, and we really feel that this is causing a huge impact on a large number of people's lives, disproportionately affecting women and girls. We are in fact calling for greater steps to be made by the government, for example, ring fencing more money for safer transport, and looking at resolutions around safe route home, how to make parks safer, spaces where people exercise, and so on. So that's a large part of our lobbying and preventing work in that regard. So I just wanted to now about stalking specifically. We define this as a pattern of fixated and obsessive behaviour, which is repetitive, persistent, intrusive, and causes fear of violent encounters, fear and distress in the victim. There is, in fact, no legal definition of stalking, which in some ways is quite problematic, and it, we think, has added to an extent a lack of understanding of what stalking is. However, we also know that stalkers will use a wide range of behaviours to stalk, so we wouldn't want that that sort of list to be finite. We may or may not know that 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men in the UK will be stalked in their lifetime. And in the most recent data set ending in 2023, there are around an estimated 1.6 million victims of stalking, and that's from the crime survey for England and Wales. So whilst nowhere near that many people actually report to the police, from what that survey shows, people are actually saying that they're experiencing stalking to that extent, which is obviously extremely concerning. We run the National Stalking Helpline and Advocacy Service. We also run various other services for victims that are trauma-informed, and we advise victims on how they can pursue a case against their stalker through the criminal justice system. And our helpline currently suggests that that statistic does vary a bit, but around half of people who are being stalked, who have contacted our service, are being stalked by someone that they were in a previous relationship with. The other half might include, other associates, perhaps colleagues, neighbours, people they might have come across, through hobbies and exercise. Very few people are stalked by complete strangers, but that is another typology, we would say. If you read about celebrities being stalked, it's very likely to be the kind of perpetrator that's stalking them, someone who doesn't actually know them, but got a public profile, again with members of parliament and councillors and so on. So there's a whole range of ways that we can be subject to stalking, and we do know that women are proportionately affected by stalking. Around 80% of stalking victims will be women. What is stalking? Well, it can, as I said, encompass a whole range of behaviours, and that in a way is what is so devastating and all-encompassing about it. It could be someone physically visiting you. That's the kind of conception perhaps that we have. It's somebody waiting outside your home or work, or loitering in places that you frequently visit, or sort of physically spying on you or watching you somehow. This is, of course, the in-person behaviours that we might see. So following unwanted through letters and gifts. We do very frequently see stalkers contacting third parties, so perhaps even employers, friends and family, contacts and acquaintances, to try to get to the victim themselves. Behaviours can also include criminal damage, people's cars, houses, and of course actual physical assault, sexual assault, and devastatingly, in some cases, can end in murder. Online behaviours that we see can be anything from texting, very frequently the kinds of social media platforms and communication channels that we use every day. So very difficult to in any way limit or filter out those contacts. We're all on, we're all texting, messaging on social networking sites every day. So that's that kind of feeling of all-encompassing surveillance that report to us. Again, through third parties, through third-party online social media accounts, unwanted emails and other digital communications, but also authorised access to online accounts or devices. So looking into, say, Facebook account, social media account, putting nudging material up there, perhaps posting nudging material about them on their work social media or websites. I mean, you name it, really. Stalker will use any means to stalk, including accusing the victim of a stalker. You can see that frequently as well. So just want to think about what services are that we offer and how we might be able to support or report ourselves if we think we've been affected by these issues. So our independent stalking advocates are trained specialists who provide victims with expert advice and support during their time of crisis, really, both navigating the criminal justice system if they want to pursue a conviction against their stalker. Advocacy support can be a longer period of support for that victim. So the helpline might have an initial contact with someone and say, keep a log of incidents or perhaps do this or that. Advocacy will be someone potentially even going to court with them to really make sure that they understand the system and support them in collecting evidence and reporting to the police. So there's really a huge amount that advocates do in their role. And most importantly, they carry out specialist risk assessments and ensure that a safety plan is in place. So what I would say about stalking is it really does need an expert to talk through the types of behaviours, to read between the lines what the risks that person might be. Because on the surface of it, it might seem as if, oh, well, you know, it's rather a lot of emails or contacts, but none of them are an overt threat of violence, or it's a bit inconvenient, but you know, it should all go away. Sadly, we do actually hear police officers sometimes saying that to victims. Actually, what we know about stalking is that it very often escalates and becomes more and more intense over time if it's not addressed early on. So what our advocates will do is highlight in the most sensitive way that and that is in fact the risk, and ensure that police are advised to put in place a protective order which prevents the stalker from contacting them, and advising them on how to collect evidence which will strengthen their case and show the unwanted behaviour over a period of time. We actually know from some research we carried out that for respondents who have an advocate advising them, the likelihood of them seeing their stalker convicted increases to around 1 in 4 cases, rather than for the published rates for England and Wales, which is around a 1 in 1,000. So not only do advocates play a vital role in supporting victims, but they really help with that criminal justice outcome. So if you do know anyone affected by any of these, please do contact the helpline there on your screens, and especially trained advocates will do everything that they can to help. And it's worth really pointing out every stalker will behave differently, so that safety plan needs to be tailored to the individual. Some will stalk mainly online, others might be in person with different approaches. So it's important that that safety plan is tailored to that person, really. Some general advice we might give around stalking is really around recording what is going on. If you feel safe to do that on a device, if you think your device might be being tampered with, potentially by the stalker, again, we would really urge people to contact our helpline, as we can get specialist advice from a cyber experts to look at devices, and particularly where there might have been perhaps tracking or surveillance technology put on there that might not be obvious. They can actually detect and try and find that if you feel like something isn't right with your accounts online, for instance. So, but any really incidents, unwanted messages, take screenshots, particularly if they're likely to be then deleted by the stalker to eliminate the evidence. try and keep a log of incidents and things that don't feel right in a way that feels safe to you. Always seek support, report if you feel able to. It's really good to tell a trusted person and not to feel that you're on your own with it. You know, if you don't feel able to report it to the police initially, again, go to a specialist service. They can advise you of what that process might look like. And if this is happening in a workplace from potentially a colleague or maybe a client or someone you're coming across in your work life, we would really encourage telling your manager, your employer, so that a plan can be put in place around keeping you safe at work, in conjunction with talking to a stalking advocate. So clearly, if you are able to report to the police, that can then escalate that prevention piece I was talking about, preventing the contact from the stalker, putting in place a protective order that prohibits them from doing that. And actually, if they break that order, that is in fact a criminal offence. So the order being in place can be it sort of prevents people, or it can put people off carrying on with the stalking behaviour, essentially. Just the police eye on what's happening. Also, it's important, if you do report to an employer, to ensure that you are also speaking to a specialist service, because they have got that expertise in putting in place that safety plan. And we would also really recommend, I know many of you have done this, taking our stand up against street harassment bystander intervention training, which I will talk about briefly as well, simply because it also helps you to observe situations where people might be feeling unsafe and to signpost them and support them in those instances as well. So just thinking about safety planning, not just for stalking now, thinking a bit more broadly, out and about, perhaps with issues around harassment, just letting people know where you are at any one time is something that we can all habit of doing. I know that Diana Lamplugh once said, you know, personal safety might be common sense, but it's not necessarily common practice. And sometimes we don't want to think about a worst case scenario. So, you know, we do look to the best scenario, which is absolutely great. But if something were to go wrong, it's good to have a plan as to how we might alert someone to the fact that we need some help. So we always advocate that people have a buddy. We organise this as part of our working practice, in fact, in the workplace. But we also advocate this for people who are out and about. Let's just say we're going off to meet friends for an evening. Let someone who is a trusted contact, perhaps they're not out and about in that group, know where you are, who you're meeting, you know, what your sort of journey is, what time you're likely to be back, and just have a bit of a plan so that if you get into trouble, there's someone who knows that you need some help, and perhaps they can call help for you if you let them know where you are and they know what your plans were. Simple, like getting home safely. So we all tend to have one bag. Sometimes we even have our cash cards in the same case as our phone, which is clearly a sort of prime target for, you know, unfortunately, if someone was to steal our bag or manage to take our phone, we might then be without a way of paying to, you know, make a phone call or make contact. And in fact, that probably is our contact list of phones. If you're like me, I certainly don't know anybody's phone number. So it's worth just having separate list of a couple of key phone numbers separate to your phone and your main bag, so that you could ask to make a call from somebody else's phone, go to a shop or so forth, and just have a bit of change and separate money. And we're also reliant on, you know, paying by phones and cards these days. Sometimes it's useful to just have a bit of cash somewhere in case the worst case scenario happens. So just going back to that sort of practical tip, really, something to think about. So, as I mentioned, we run our Stand Up Against Street Harassment bystander intervention training. Many of you hopefully will be aware of this. Some of you might have done this. It's had absolutely brilliant feedback. Everybody who's undertaken it says it's really helped them take away a bit of a plan about what they might do if they observe someone being harassed on the street. And the absolute message around this is to keep yourself safe at all times. But if there is a way you might be able to help that person safely remove themselves from that situation, this training gives you the tools to do that. QR code there, by the way, takes you to the registration page on our website. There are a number of training sessions online planned there, and anybody can join. It's completely free. You can sign up for any of the trainings listed there. We continually update that page, so there'll be several coming up over the coming weeks. It's actually Anti-Street Harassment Week on the 15th of April, so we'll be doing a big push around this, and there'll be lots of training sessions going on in the lead up and during that week. So really encourage you to take part. Focuses in on a framework called the 5 Ds, which are 5 ways of safely intervening if you see someone being harassed. One is around distracting the person, the perpetrator of the harassment, so creating a situation where the person who's being harassed could maybe step away. Perhaps you start talking to that other person. You know, I think we might have gone to college together, or I'm not quite sure where my next tube stop is. That kind of thing. You could perhaps document the harassment by videoing it or taking a note of what's going on. Offer it to that person afterwards if they want to use it as evidence. Certainly not share it without their consent, but sometimes it's hard to actually prove these things have happened yourself. Directly confronting the person if it's safe to do so. That can be less popular option because people feel concerned about their own safety, and quite rightly so. But this training talks through how to assess that. And also, delay is just checking in with that person after and making sure that they're okay, and is there anything you can do to help them. So I would encourage you to take that. It looks at different scenarios where you might be able to help with that kind of intervention, and really emphasises that we've all got a part to play in addressing street harassment and those behaviours that we've all experienced and we really want to reduce over time. A whistle stop tour. I'm really happy to answer any more questions in the time we've got. We've left that time there. There's some contact details there if you want to follow up with me or any of my team about any of the issues that have come up today. Yes, really look forward to any discussions now and hearing from you in the future.
Thanks, Saskia. That was really interesting, and I never cease to be shocked by the data of the prevalence and the escalation around stalking and harassment. So thank you very much for that. We have had a few of questions that have come in, which would be great if you're able to give your views on those. And the first one was just around what to do if you don't have any evidence of stalking or harassment, whether to report to the police, what's the best way of reporting to the police if you don't have any specific evidence?
Well, evidence is key to pursuing a criminal case. However, so if it was incidents, say, where you saw someone in the supermarket and then they disappeared or that kind of thing, I would say absolutely log those incidents, because it might be that the police can put together evidence about the perpetrator's whereabouts at that time to prove that, in fact, they did get on a tube and got off a bus near the supermarket you're talking about, or any such thing. So it's absolutely worth keeping that log yourself, even if you don't have photographic or evidence or emails or messages necessarily. Absolutely start keeping that log. Of course, if you can get any of that evidence, it is really useful. But again, a stalking advocate might be able to help advise you on how to safely gather that evidence. If you don't have it in the first instance, we would always encourage people to reach out and get help anyway, certainly from a support service.
Thanks, Saskia. I think that's really helpful. Like you say, even if you don't have physical evidence of logging whatever the incidents are that you've witnessed or that you feel have taken place, of logging all of
Absolutely,
those,
yes,
a time, a
yes.
date. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. One of the other questions that we received was just around if and what there are in terms of differences among police forces across the UK. So depending on where you're living, what sort of a response? Because I'm presuming that there are probably differences.
Yes, I mean, we do hear that from the victims that we speak to, and we can also measure that by looking at the number of reports of stalking that are recorded by different police forces, and also the number of stalking protection orders they're putting in place, and then, of course, the number of convictions they're getting in that area. So we can see a bit of a postcode lottery in relation to the response, and we work with the National Police Chiefs Council to highlight their risks around stalking and try and increase the prioritisation of stalking as a crime across police forces. We do unfortunately feel that it is not given the priority resourcing by police that it needs, both from a financial perspective, increasing officers working on those cases, but also in training. What we know is that many police forces lack the specialist expertise to recognise stalking and to respond to it adequately, which is why in some cases they're not putting in place the protection that's needed. I'm sure you'll have heard about devastating cases, including Gracie Spinks and others who have been in the news of late. And what those cases show us, again, unfortunately, is there is still a lack of understanding and recognition of stalking, and that action could have been taken earlier on to prevent those tragedies. So in answer to your question, yes, there is a difference in the response, but we are working with the Police National League for Stalking to try and increase and improve the response across all forces. And in fact, there's a mechanism called a super complaint, where an organisation like ours, who represents a large number of victims, can, on behalf of those victims, report systemic problematic issues that they find. And we have submitted a report a year and a half ago, and that committee is about to publish the results and findings of that report. So those recommendations will go to every single police force to improve their response. So we look forward to working with them on that.
So I guess it's just really important to make sure that if you're getting what you consider a poor service, to report it to an organisation like yourselves, or
so we're aware of the discrepancies, and we can actually approach individual forces and say, we know that there are problems here. How can we support you with training and better, risk planning?
Yes, yeah. There was a query that came up just to check and clarify whether the Suzy Lamplugh Trust works to support male and female victims of stalking.
We absolutely do. We support all victims of stalking, no matter how they choose to identify themselves, from a gender perspective or anything else. Absolutely. We find around 20% of victims accessing our services are male or identify as, non-female, essentially, and we support all of them.
Okay, that's great. There was a question about what to do if the police have, I guess this will be kind of relate to what you've already said about if the police have closed, that someone has reported stalking and the police have closed it down on more than one occasion. So I guess the advice would be to carry on and to...
Definitely. Actually, something we highlighted in a more recent report we've written, which is on our website, about the next step of the journey after the police actually into the court system, because the no further action can be decided, by the police, but also by the CPS if they feel that there's the Crown prosecution if there's not enough evidence. What we would say is appeal that decision. If you feel there is enough evidence, and very often there is, actually, that case can be reviewed on appeal. So it's always worth going back and pursuing the case. And in some cases, that then goes through as a charge and a conviction.
Okay, thanks, Saskia. But another question, and I guess this relates to what if there are different legislation or different rules, or if it's treated differently, if it's someone that a person has previously been friends with or has been an acquaintance with, and then becomes, these might not be the right words, but becomes fixated and then and starts to stalk somebody, but they have historically been a friend.
Well, it doesn't make any difference at all. I mean, many of the victims that approach us have actually been in a relationship with that person, or they may have potentially even gone on 1 or 2 dates with them. Nothing actually even happened. They could be a friend. They could be, it doesn't matter. If it becomes fixated and obsessive, that's the issue. It doesn't matter, what led up to that. At that point, it is then unsafe and it's no longer okay. And if you as a person feel unsafe, then it is unacceptable and unwanted. So that makes it a crime, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
no,
again, always
good.
come forward. It doesn't matter who it is. Always seek help, because sadly we have seen cases across the board of previous relationships, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, you name it. Anyone can be a stalker, and we would support them all exactly the same. And the law sees them all as the same.
Yeah, no, thank you. There was one question earlier just around, and this relates, I guess, to safety, particularly of women, but around cab drivers or mini cab drivers, and the sort of how safe, unsafe that is. And I know that's something that Suzy Lamplugh Trust has been.
Yes, that's our oldest campaign. I think Diana Lamplugh started it back in the 1990s, which is concerning that we're still lobbying on the fact that sadly drivers are not vetted to the point where we would feel completely assured that they are all safe, not to want to spread panic of any kind, and we would still, advocate the use of travelling by taxi as a safe means of transport. But what we're trying to say is there are loopholes in the law that sadly mean that even if a licensing authority knows that a driver applying for licence has got criminal convictions, including for violent offences, not just shoplifting when they were a teenager or whatever, serious offences, our evidence shows in some cases those authorities are still employing those drivers knowing that they have a course of conduct of concerning and harmful behaviours. So we continue to lobby the government to tighten the law around this. We know that the vast majority of drivers are completely safe and doing their utmost to transport people safely. We just need to filter out that minority that are using that position of power, essentially, because you're locked in a car with them, to conduct, unwanted and sometimes dangerous behaviours. Even though those incidents might be few and far between, we still feel that they're too many. And as I say, we are continuing to call for a national standard of safety checks on drivers that is embedded in law. Currently, that is not the case, and it's quite inconsistent how authorities assess the safety of their drivers.
Thanks, Saskia. That's great. We had another question, just if it was possible to give some more information about what a protective order, what it means, what is entailed.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, there's a lot of criminal justice jargon, I know. So if you report a case of stalking, it might take a period of time to gather the evidence needed to go to court to get the conviction. But meanwhile, the stalking might be carrying on. So the police can put in place what is called a civil order, and there are several for different purposes. A stalking protection order was actually brought in 2020, specifically for stalking. You might have heard of a restraining order, particularly for domestic abuse perpetrators and others. But it's a piece of legislation that can be put in place against a perpetrator that says you are not allowed to contact this person, come anywhere near them, go within a certain radius of them, visit certain locations, potentially even not go on public transport in a certain area. There's all kinds of ways that order can set out to keep that victim safe. It can also require the perpetrator to hand over their phone to help the police gather evidence that they've been stalking the victim. And there are different levels of order. Without going into too much detail, there are interim stalking protection orders, which in theory could be put in place within a few days, while you then get the evidence for a full order, and that can be in place for indefinitely, a period of time. We know that court cases are very delayed at the moment. Might be a year till you'll get a court case. So meanwhile, how are the police going to keep you safe? And if an order is in place, it is a criminal offence for the perpetrator to breach that order. So if they then go against the order and they contact you in any way, that can be a criminal offence in and of itself, and they could go to prison for breaching the order before they've even got a stalking conviction, if that makes sense. So they're really important pieces of law that can be put in place quite quickly to protect victims.
All right, great. Thank you, Saskia. We had just one more question around if there is any other legislation that's being considered or pending that that people on the webinar could support should they feel like they want to.
That is an excellent question. There is currently the Victim and Prisoners Bill going through Parliament. It's taking absolutely ages. It's currently in the House of Lords. So in a sense, the scope for lobbying is slightly closing, but if people are interested to know, what we're trying to get included in that bill is the specialist stalking advocates I just mentioned, listed within that bill as an essential support service to victims, so that we can then ensure that our services like ours and across the National Stalking Consortium are adequately funded so that we can support victims, and also that agencies work better together to protect victims, so that there's more information sharing between police, social services, probation, to keep victims safe. So very happy to provide you, John, with a bit more information about that you could send out to people if they're interested. Yes, it's as far as lobbying, it's probably quite limited, but interesting for you to know, and we'll certainly keep you updated with where that's going. But interestingly, in case people aren't aware, a couple of pieces of legislation came into force last year, which you might be interested in. One is the Worker Protection Act, which now which has introduced a duty to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace for employers. So employers now have to take active steps to prevent this, rather than just reacting when it happens. And the Public Sexual Harassment Bill also got passed, and this means that now there's a far wider range of behaviours of the public harassment that I was talking about with bystander that can now be criminalised. It's very early days. Guidance will be written about how to use that, but it's a step in the right direction.
That's great, Saskia. Thank you. I'm very aware of the time. I know we need to close this webinar for today. So I'd just like to really express my great thanks, Saskia. It's been really interesting, really helpful. We've had lots of positive feedback in the chat. Thank you for taking the time on this late Friday afternoon. As everyone can see, there is a QR code on the screen. If you can use your phones, then you'll be able to scan and put in your feedback about the webinar. We will be sharing all the recordings of the webinar and the slides where we have them with everybody next week, and the recordings will be on our website. I would just really urge anyone who's particularly interested or been affected by what Saskia has been talking about to go to the Suzy Lamplugh Trust website, and also whether or not you go on the Suzy Lamplugh website, I would really urge everyone who hasn't to undertake the bystander training, which you can access again through the Suzy Lamplugh Trust website or through our own website. It's the same training. We just direct people to Suzy Lamplugh, but if you can't remember, or those are the routes to do that. So yeah, I'd just really like to thank you, Saskia. It's been really helpful, really useful.
Thank you for
And I
inviting
hope
me.
everybody has a really good weekend and it doesn't pour with rain, unlike most of the time recently. So thank you all. Thank you, Saskia, and have a
No
great
problems.
weekend all.
Bye.
Bye bye.